Good morning, everyone. Please let me know whether my sound is coming properly or having a little doubt about this. Can any one of you please respond this on to chat, whether or not you
Yes,
can hear
sir,
me?
boss.
All right, so that's good. Fine. Let's start with the session. So, guys, so far, like we have seen how we can write down a web service class by using HTTP GET method. And what is the use of HTTP GET method is to get something from the object. If you are, for example, if you are designing a web service like this, I mean, if this is your Salesforce environment, right? If this is your Salesforce environment, and let's say inside in the Salesforce, we know that there are a lot many objects, right? And if there is an external system, right? If there is an external system, maybe, uh, yeah. So maybe if there is an external system which wanted to get the access over certain records of, let's say, account object of any object. If this is an external system, if this is an external system, now this external system particularly wanted to fetch the data, get the data, to receive the data of a certain object. Let's say, so how what it's going to do? It would going to make a request. It would going to make a request. It would going to make a request to the Salesforce that I wanted to get the data, let's say, from the account object, from the account object. I wanted to get the data from the account object. So consider this as your account object. This is that account object, right? Inside in the account, there is are a lot many data. Now, it could be possible that this external system is either requesting the complete set of record or a specific set. Or maybe it could also possible that this is going to send a certain parameters as well, right? We have seen all those things, we have seen all those things in the past. Like what could happen if ये जैसे ये वाला जो एग्जांपल था जिसमें आपने देखा कि हमने वी हैव सप्लाइड द केस नंबर एज एन इनपुट कि इंस्टेड ऑफ गिविंग मी एवरीथिंग आउट ऑफ दैट जस्ट गिव मी दैट पर्टिकुलर डिटेल्स ऑफ द केस वेयर आई हैव बीन सप्लाइंग यू द केस रिकॉर्ड आई हैव बीन सप्लाइंग यू टू द केस रिकॉर्ड तो ये एक्सटर्नल सिस्टम क्या दे रहा है हमको इट इज रिक्वेस्टिंग समथिंग एंड along with that request it is either sending it would either send it can send something specifically that it could be maybe an ID or maybe a name or any related entity or it could be something like कि आप मुझे पूरा पूरा रिकॉर्ड निकाल के दे दीजिए तो हमने दोनों तरीके से सीखा लाइक इन द फर्स्ट एग्जांपल द वेरी फर्स्ट एग्जांपल which was a plain ये वाला create the RESTful web service to get all of the data inside the account तो इसमें जो भी एक्सटर्नल सिस्टम था नाउ टू रिप्रेजेंट दैट एक्सटर्नल सिस्टम अभी फॉर नाउ वी आर यूजिंग वर्क बेंचेस राइट बट इन रियल टाइम हाउ वी डू दैट तो इसके थोड़ा सा बाद में एक टॉपिक में लेने वाला हूँ OAuth ऑथेंटिकेशन प्रोसेस बिकॉज अभी कैसा हो रहा है what you're looking at right now is something like this is जैसे वर्क बेंच ही पकड़ लो सो वर्क बेंच कैसा करता है कि वी हैव ऑथेंटिकेटेड दैट इन द बिगनिंग एक बार हमने उसको ऑथेंटिकेट किया था वर्क बेंच को वर्क बेंच को हमने अलाउ किया था उसके बाद में वी एक्चुअली आर नॉट अलाउइंग दैट वो डायरेक्टली रिक्वेस्ट करता है एंड दैट डेटा जो भी वो रिक्वेस्ट करता है इट्स गेटिंग फेच्ड और वो वर्क बेंच पे हम देख लेते हैं तो वर्क बेंच को आप थोड़ी देर के लिए मान के चलो फॉर अ टाइम बीइंग कि वर्क बेंच है वो एक्सटर्नल सिस्टम वो थर्ड पार्टी सिस्टम राइट ऐसा थोड़ी देर के लिए हमको अज्यूम कर लेना चाहिए अब हम क्या करते हैं बेसिकली सो व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू डू तो हमने दो दो तरह के एग्जांपल्स देखे हैं यहाँ पे ये एक तो जैसे कि सारा रिकॉर्ड्स या फिर आप इफ यू आर मेकिंग एनी चेंजेस इन द क्वेरी अगर आप जैसे इंस्टेड ऑफ आई मीन इंस्टेड ऑफ ट्रांसफरिंग एवरीथिंग आई गेस द सेकंड नंबर वाज कि जैसे हम लोग क्वेरी में चेंज करके particularly इस एग्जांपल में if you would observe this query so what this query is actually returning it is returning the records of the cases it returning the records of the case object but do it's returning everything out of that object no it's not doing that rather it's returning only those cases where let's say the status is new all right so that is one filter you can return everything your web service class could return everything एक तो ये या फिर your web service class could return a precise amount of data based on what filter you have applied inside in your SQL query एक तो ये था तीसरा एक तरीका और था जो मैंने आपको इसके पहले के लेक्चर में बताया कि हाँ मतलब क्वेरी में चेंजेस ना करते हुए, इफ लेट्स से कि दी ये जो हमारा एक्सटर्नल सिस्टम है ना, दिस एक्सटर्नल सिस्टम इज सेंडिंग समथिंग, जैसे एक आईडी सेंड कर रहा है वो, या वो कुछ नेम सेंड कर रहा है, या फिर कोई फील्ड की एक वैल्यू सेंड कर रहा है, एंड बेस्ड ऑन दैट जैसे इस केस में आईडी था, तो जैसे इसने एक आईडी सेंड किया कि आई मीन इंस्टेड ऑफ सेंडिंग मी एवरी आउट ऑफ दैट ऑब्जेक्ट, एवरीथिंग आउट ऑफ दैट ऑब्जेक्ट, प्लीज डू रिटर्न मी ओनली दोज कंटेंट्स which would matches to this particular condition. Now what is that condition? It has sent it the id, the request is coming along with an parameter. So how exactly we can cache that parameter, that is also we have seen. So there is a rest context class for that. So you have to go with rest context, and there are request, request is request and response, there are two subclasses to this. So we have used that request, and then requests have something called as params, a defined method. But this method would going to return what? A map collection, map of string comma string. So that's why we have collected it that inside. So whatever the parameter, it is coming from the external system, that is being collected, by this syntax, rest context dot request dot params. Now once you have stored it inside a collection like a map collection, we know we can apply the methods of the map collection: get, put. These are some of the methods over here there. So what I'm getting exactly what is the parameter inside that. So this way we get, and where like ID equals to this particular thing. So this was another way. This was another way to get everything. But see, this whole mechanism was working. This whole mechanism was working all because you have created a web service. You have created a web service over here. You have created a web service. You have created something called as an API. That API acts as a mediator. It acts as a channel. It would take the data from this object. If this object I assume to be as an account object, if I will assume this as an account object. Now this is an external system which is asking for certain amount of data from an object. Who is going to facilitate that who's going to facilitate this whole transaction? Who is going to make sure that the request, whatever is coming from the external system, that amount of data should be get transferred? So we have written something called as a web service class, an API class. That API would take the data from that object and it would transfer it to the external system this way, like this. So now if someone would ask you what is an API, what you can say that API is a mediator, API is what? It's a mediator. It is something that stands in between external system and the objects of the Salesforce. It is something that stands in between the external system, external world, and then object of the Salesforce. So this, what we have understood so far was about only getting the data. That's why in every example, what we did was get. Like if this is your object, and then, you wanted to get the data, and then you wanted to transfer this. So this, a kind of API which you have designed was working on the principle of get method, HTTP get, right? HTTP get. Now we are moving forward towards another one, like, for example, let's say if this is my Salesforce and this is an external system. Now inside in the Salesforce there are multiple objects. There's one object called as account or case or whatever it is, and let's say this external system is requesting to delete a record. This external system is deleting, maybe that external system is sending an ID of that there's a particular record inside in this object, and I wanted to delete that record. All right. So how to write down that a kind of web service which would take that input parameters, and then accordingly, it would go to that object. If this is a record, then delete that record. So this we are going to perform with a method called as HTTP delete, right? Let's That was, I guess, was the maximum theory that could be explained for this purpose. Now let's understand how we can write down that a kind of web service class. So I have this example. This method is going to be get used for this. So create a web service to remove hiring manager records from the object based on the hiring manager record. Yeah. So Understand, whenever you delete something, the most important thing, even though if you are performing this with a data loader or Salesforce inspector, right? If you would remember, whenever we perform and delete operation, we certainly would require one thing called as an ID. For delete operation particularly, for update operation, all right? For update operation, for delete operation, you must have something called as an ID. For upsert and insert, it's not required. For insert, it's absolutely not. For the upsert operation, if you would not give an ID, so if you would give in during an upsert operation, if you give an ID, it would perform update operation. You know, don't give that, it would perform an insert operation. But if you are performing an update and delete in particularly, in that case, giving the ID is very essential. So how we would assume, how, let me try to design, create a diagram for that. So we would assume that there is an external system over here. This is that external system. This is that external system. And this external system would send an ID. It would going to send an ID. All right. ID of a particular record inside in the Salesforce for an object. There's an object called, let's say, hiring manager. Hiring manager is one of the objects, right? Hiring manager is one of the objects. Now, this external system are supplying that ID that, yes, I wanted to delete that. So what we are going to do, we are going to build up an API. API why? Because this external system could make an interaction with the object through the API only. So I'm going to create an API by using HTTP delete method, because this API is focused about deleting. So it would take that ID, and we know that how to take that parameters. So we know that there is a REST context class, REST context dot request dot params, right? This way we are going to collect that ID. Then we will going to fire an SQL query based on that ID. We'll try to fetch out that data if this is that data with the matching ID, right? If the ID matches with that, we are going to fetch it, and then we are going to perform a DML delete operation. So this data would going to be get deleted inside the Salesforce object. This is what is the use cases. All right. So let's go with that. I would be creating a class called as hiring manager service. And I'm taking you to developer console for this. I would be creating a new class over here. The name is called hiring manager services. Now, to make this class as an API, to make this class as an API, the first thing always have to annotate this with a defined keyword called as REST resource. REST resource inside in the bracket, you have to mention your URL mappings right here. And see, this is a known format which every time you'll have to follow the same pattern, right? There's no differences. Now, this inverted commas, make two slashes over here, just put up your asterisk, because we have seen this with the first example. If you would not give that, it's actually was giving you certain. So yeah, this is a known format. So if you would ask me what is the purpose of this, I'll have to search this out in the Google. But as far as I can remember, the asterisk would make it a quantity which could be, which could be accessible from any place. So I would try to find out the precise answer for this. But as far as I can remember, the asterisk symbol, this symbol is something that represents all possible cases or all possibilities. So, well, I can say, like, you can definitely Google this out and you can come up with a more answer. Here's is something you have to give a name to this class. Any name, right? Any name. So this is called as your resource name, by the way. And every APIs, every web service class must always be a global, must always be a global class. Otherwise, you will get this error, right? And this is very crystal clear error, which we have seen. REST resources classes must be declared as global, right? Now, now inside over here, I would be, I would create that business logic, which would take let's say record ID as input and perform the delete operation. Perform the lots of typos. delete operation. ठीक है, तो here I'm going to develop that business logic. All right, I would be creating that business logic around it. The first thing is collect the parameter. Even before that, the entire business logic, you would be creating it inside a method, right? You are going to create a method for that. Let's say I would be creating a method. Let's say global and global static, and let's say let me give a message. I would be returning a message, that message maybe the record has been deleted, or maybe the record not found, something like that. So because I'm prompting, I'm acknowledging with a message. So the return type I have taken as a string, and the method which I would be creating, let's say, is delete, let's say hr record. So this is the this is the method name. Now this method, which you are creating, this method which you are creating, this method which you are creating, because it is performing a delete operation, this has to be, this has to be compulsorily, should be have a delete, delete. It should be defined with http delete, because this method is focused towards what? Towards deletion. This method is focused towards deletion. All right. So that is what this means now, because you are performing a return. You are giving a return type as a string. That's why this error is coming. चलो, आगे बढ़ते हैं. So the first thing is to collect that ID जो हमें request में मिलने वाली है. So we know for that, we are going to make a use of your REST context dot request dot params. ठीक है, we would be making a use of this. So define method REST content dot request dot params. With the help of this, I would be collecting that ID that is coming inside input. But this method, this method always returns a map collection, right? And that's the reason, that's the reason I would have to define a map of string comma string. See, in the first example, it seems to be little complicated when we have used for it. We have used it for the first time, and in the second, and this difficulty diluted. This difficulty is it's automatically diluted with every occurrences. So it is very obvious. It is very obvious if you would have feel that, oh, this is very difficult. This is very difficult. So that's not an issue, guys. It happens with everyone. This probably has happened with me as well. But as and when we start using something and we become habitual of that, so it's not seems to be that much different, right? So I have collected that input parameter, and we are assuming one thing. We are assuming one thing, that the external system is sending that ID of that record which we wanted to delete. So the first thing and the very important thing was to collect that ID. So for that I have used some of the known parameters, some of the defined parameters like REST context, then request. What I'm requesting the parameters. And because this method, params always returns a map collection, and so I have defined a map of string comma string. I have collected this inside a map with the name called as your params, right? Now in the previous example, what I did is like, I inside in my query, I have directly applied that get method. That also I can do it over here. So let me do one thing. There's one another method is like, there's one another way. If you feel if this is more easy to understand, you can do it like this as well. Otherwise, you can follow the what I did in the last program. I'm doing what? I'm just defining a string variable, nothing else. I'm just defining a string variables, right? I'm just defining a string variable, and I would be storing that input params dot get. And here I would be, let's assuming that it's coming like ID. So आपको याद होगा last time भी मैंने कहा था कि input parameter जो है that should have an exact match what you are mentioning over here inside get method. और हमने वो try भी करके देखा था कि if you would even make a small difference into that, it's going to throw you the error, right? So this always have to be same. What is coming inside in the input में जो आ रहा है उससे बिल्कुल match होना चाहिए 100%. ठीक है? तो अभी मैंने क्या किया कि एसक्यूएल क्वेरी में भी मैं लिख सकता हूँ इसको, दैट वी हैव डिड दिस जस्ट टू जस्ट टू व्हाट टू से, I'm just trying to give you one another flavor of this, right? I wanted you to feel like this could also be done like that. So this could also be done like this, right? So now I have collected that parameter inside a string variable called as HR record, right? HR record. And now uh, I would be I would be performing a delete operation. So delete, straightforward, delete, and inside delete I would be giving that SQL query, right? You can give it. You know this, we can do that very easily. Or else what you can do would be you're going to define a variable of hiring manager, then you store that inside in that, and then you can delete. Rather, you can directly give SQL queries in your DML statements. We tried this a lot many times, right? So you are familiar with this. So now I would be firing that query. I'm designing that select. I just wanted to select ID, nothing else. You can select name or whatever, but do you really think it is required to select the names and everything out of that record? No, we are deleting something, right? So we would just going to require the ID. To try to optimize the query as far as possible. So I wanted to get it from hiring manager. I should require that API name of the object. So I'll go to the object. I'll expand this. I am expanding this post.com view object, and from here I'll try to collect the API name. API. So select ID from the hiring manager, right? And where where the ID should match. So it should be equals to colon, a dynamic assignment. ID should match with this variable because you already have fired a. Otherwise, what you can do, you can simply put this statement over here as well, right? If you wanted to optimize this, you don't want it to get this line, one more line you don't want it to, you can simply put this, the whole equation on the right hand side. You can bring it over here and replace this. That is also possible. It all depends what do you feel. You know, if this feels more convenient and more readable to you, you can follow this pattern. Otherwise, I already have shown you how can you give it inside the query itself, right? So that's up to you. Now this is going to be get deleted, right? This is going to be deleted. So after deletion, I would be returning a message, just a string, because that's the reason I have taken string as my return type. So I would be returning like the record deleted, right? Record deleted, and let me now save this. So this is small API you have seen, like it's a very small thing. छोटी सी class, ज़्यादा बड़ी class नहीं है. And now let me call this. So I'll go to the front end part, and I would open the workbench. Workbench particularly, we assume that uh, this is the front end part. External system है ऐसा हम मान के चल रहे हैं. So you'll have to make a login into the Salesforce, and it has taken because see, एक बार ही आपको authenticate करना पड़ता है, उसके बाद में ये automatically सारे paths ले लेता है. ठीक है. If you don't, if it does not do, if it would not does the same thing, तो you don't have to worry. आप फिर से एक बार उसको आप अपने credentials डाल सकते हो, कोई problem. Then go to utility tab and click on the REST Explorer. Right. So this time I would be testing an API which is HTTP delete, as you can see. Right. So from all these functions, you'll have to first of all select the delete. Right. The API which you created is a delete, HTTP delete method. It's utilizing that method. So we'll have to test it out. So the same thing which I have just told you. Right. Services तक रखिए, इसको delete करो, हमें उसके बाद का जो भी है. Then over here you have to type something called as apex rest every time. Then give a slash every time, right? And now you have to mention the name of the resource name. Resource name, I mean the API name which for this class I have given as an HR services, HR service, right? Then again give a slash. Now how would it going to supply the parameter? So the way to do that is like this already have been discussed. Question mark, and then it should you have to take it from here, right? This should have an exact match always. Question mark ID now equals to given ID, whatever the record we put. So I shall go to, let's say, Manish Singh. This record, I'll collect this ID. I'll collect this ID, and I would be supply. Oh, I would be giving that ID. I would be giving that ID over here, right? So this is the parameter which I am giving. This is coming from external resource. With this statement, rest contains dot request dot params, it's going to be get stored inside this map collection. Then I have fired a get method, collected that ID, and based on whatever the ID has been stored, we are deleting that record, and we would be after deletion, we are displaying a method, a message, right? Let me now execute this. Record deleted, right? Now, if you go to this record, you try to refresh this interface, it would show that the record was being deleted, right? So this is simple delete method. This is simple delete method, right? I have a time. Let me try to take one more example. So create a web service to remove all the related contact records, right, from the object based on a specified name. So, let's say, I'll take you, first of all, let me try to make you understand about the use case. If I would go to, let's say, Pallavi record, do it have any contact? No, I would try to find out any such account which do have some related contacts. Let me just try to, looking like this, I can go to, I can go with this one, right? Now click onto the account. Yeah. So as you can see, this is one of the account record. And this account record, by the way, is having two contacts associated with it, right? Tesla contact and Tesla contact 2. So what is the use case is like that to remove all the related contacts from the object. So I wanted that all of the related contacts should be deleted to a particular account. Account should not be deleted. Only the contact should be deleted, right? Only the contacts that are related to that account should be get removed. So maybe in this case, we are going to supply maybe, based on the specified account name. So that means the account name is going to be the input parameter. So in this case, what I'm going to say would be like, the Tesla Corp, this type of account name would come from the external resource. We have to collect it. We have to fire a query, and then we would collect all those related contacts. We'll collect all those related contacts, and then accordingly, we would perform a deletion operation. So let's create a class for this. So I would be creating a new class. I would be creating a new class with this contact deletion services. And let me make this as a web service class. So every web service must always be global, and we have to annotate it with a keyword called rest resource. Inside in the bracket, you have to give something called as URL mapping equals to now this then double inverted comma. Here you should put up a star. Now you can give any name to this service. So delete related contact is the name what I have given. And let me now try to save up to this. So I would be creating a method over here, right? The method which would perform a delete operation. So that has to be under HTTP delete, right? That has to be under HTTP delete. One moment, guys. Just All right. So because we are creating a web service that is going to delete the record, which is responsible to delete something, right? So that's why it must be defined under HTTP delete. Now let's try to create that. So I would be creating a method. The method should always be global, like your class, global static, and say it is also going to display message. So the return type would be string, and let me give the name as remove remove related contacts. Okay. So let's first of all collect that input parameter. And this time, what is coming inside the parameter? We are assuming that account name is coming. So I would be defining a map collection, obviously, map of string, comma, string, once again, map of string, comma, string. And I would be giving the name. You can give any name. I usually follow the same every time. Input params, params equals to. Here, I would be giving that rest context dot request dot params. So we are making a use of this params method, which would collect it inside and collect, and it would store it inside this map collection. And now I would be defining, actually I would be firing a SQL query for this. Let me design that query first of all. Select, select ID, and let's say would be collecting it. Yeah, contact may collect the So yes, first name and last name. Why I'm requiring all this? I don't require this. I'll have to delete, so I just would require ID. That's enough. And the second name would be uh, account name, because we are not getting ID. So account dot name, and we are collecting this everything from the contact where the account dot name is have an exact match with your input params dot get input params dot get, and we would be assuming that parameter which is coming is name. ऐसा हम assume कर लेते हैं. Actually assume नहीं करना पड़ता. You'll have to check it out. आपको जाके देखना पड़ता है ये. उसके हिसाब से ये बनाते हैं. चलो. और हाँ, अभी यहाँ पे रिटर्न टाइप would be a list collection. Why list collection? तो ये आप यहीं से एग्जाम्पल समझ लो with this one only. अगर so if let's say कि अगर हमारे पास में अकाउंट नेम आया टेस्ला कॉर्प, तो टेस्ला कॉर्प के साथ में कितने कितने कॉन्टैक्ट्स हैं? दो कॉन्टैक्ट्स हैं, है ना? सो वी कैन सिंपली अंडरस्टैंड कि दिस क्वेरी विच वी आर डिजाइनिंग ऑन कॉन्टैक्ट कुड रिटर्न मल्टीपल रिकॉर्ड्स ऑफ कॉन्टैक्ट. इस अकाउंट जो है, जो भी अकाउंट का नाम आया है, उसके साथ में मल्टीपल कॉन्टेक्ट आ सकते हैं. दैट्स व्हाई आई वुड बी डिफाइनिंग दिस. दैट्स व्हाई आई वुड बी डिफाइनिंग दिस इनसाइड अ लिस्ट कलेक्शन. List of contact. Why? Because it could have multiple contacts. LST contacts to delete. Right? LST contacts to delete. Okay. So we now try to save this and type. And once you have collected this inside, you can now simply delete that. So delete this whole delete this whole collection, and finally after deletion you can return a message like all related contacts were deleted, something like that. Let me now try to see this. ठीक है. So count dot name is question. ठीक है, seems to be good. If we copy this one, I'll come to the front end part. Let's go to the workbench. I would be refreshing this interface. Now from here onwards, I'll have to make the changes. So apex rest slash the name, the resource name of your API, which we have given as delete related contacts, and this delete related contact, after that a question mark, and now inside over here we have given this. So I would be making a use of name, and then in the name I can give as equals to maybe we require uh, let me see with this. अगर ऐसा नहीं आता है तो यहाँ पे एक प्लस ऑपरेटर देना पड़ सकता है, बस लेट मी ट्राई विद एज इट इज, इसको ट्राई करके देखते हैं। हाँ, चल रहा है। यू डोंट हैव टू, अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा, इसने अपने से ले लिया। गुड गुड गुड। सो इवन दो इफ यू वुड इफ देयर इज अ स्पेस इन बिटवीन, जैसे यहाँ देख रहे हो आप टेस्ला और कॉर्प के बीच में स्पेस है, सो इट हैज टेकन दिस ऑटोमेटिकली, वरना हमको देना पड़ता है जितनी भी स्पेसेस होती हैं, यू हैव टू रिप्लेस दैट विद प्लस सिंबल। बट यहाँ ऐसा कुछ नहीं हुआ, इट हैज टेकन इट ऑटोमेटिकली। एंड नाउ ऑल रिलेटेड contacts are deleted, something like that. That is the message. Now you can see there are two contacts. Now I would go and I would refresh this, so there are no contacts, all the contacts have been deleted. So guys, this was about your http delete. Now in the next session I would be starting with the http post method. Sorry, I cannot take your questions right now. I'll have few stuffs to be done. If you have anything to ask, go and when you can post it inside your WhatsApp group. Thank you for joining. Have a nice day.